What if I told you Australia is sitting on some of the most powerful energy resources in the world, but we're still paying through the roof for electricity?
Your power bill is about to increase again.
Electricity bills will rise next month, despite the state government promising households would pay less under the LNP.
When you think you're smart and pay in advance, yet the cost of living is so high that your electricity bill comes in nearly $2,000.
Cost of living crisis is bad, people. Prices are through the roof. Everything's expensive as hell.
Anthony Albanese lied to Australians when he said he had a plan for cheaper power prices.
I know you've said helping Aussies with rising power bills is your number one priority.
Australia is wild.
And what is your understanding of when electricity prices will finally start to fall?
The cost of living is crushing, and at the centre of it all sits one bill that has become the symbol of this crisis: the power bill. Electricity isn't just expensive, it's punishing. Every month, households brace themselves for numbers that climb higher and higher, numbers that drain savings, erase paychecks, and force families into impossible choices. Do you heat the home or do you buy groceries? Do you keep the lights on or do you pay the rent? The power bill has become more than a utility statement. It's a reminder of how fragile life has become. It's the proof that survival in Australia is harder than ever. And while politicians talk about resilience, ordinary Australians are left staring at bills that feel like ransom notes, wondering how much longer they can keep going. This isn't just about electricity, it's about dignity. It's about the cost of living spiralling out of control. And it's about the quiet truth that in Australia today, even keeping the lights on has become a luxury.
When you think you're smart and pay in advance, yet the cost of living is so high that your electricity bill comes in nearly $2,000. Man, you've still got a good $1,400 to pay off it. Ugh. Who else is suffering here? This is because my gas heater is no longer, and electricity was put in instead.
Make no mistake, we're not pursuing net zero. We are pursuing energy affordability. Anthony Albanese lied to Australians when he said he had a plan for cheaper power prices. And every bill, every month, every quarter is a reminder of that lie.
And what is your understanding of when electricity prices will finally start to fall?
Well, the modelling is out there for people to see, and people can examine that.
Can you guarantee that electricity prices will actually fall? And when can Australians expect that to happen if it will?
Well, the modelling is out there and you can see the modelling.
Can you guarantee that?
You can see the modelling.
Do you agree that electricity prices will fall?
Well, the analysis is there from them.
Authorised by Ahurst Liberal Canberra.
Australia is wild. Just bought dinner. I'm cooking it myself, right? Got the cheapest steak, rice, some yogurt and broccolini, $22.
We need to talk about the fact that your energy bills are about to increase.
Electricity bills will rise next month, despite the state government promising households would pay less under the LNP.
David Crisafulli and the LNP committed to lower energy prices at the election, and now we're seeing this huge increase, which you will feel the pinch for.
About 34% of Queenslanders said that they were going to switch off the heating in a bid to lower their electricity bill.
And there's no relief in sight. The Treasurer confirming the $1,000 electricity rebate won't feature in his first budget.
They're not coming to the table with any sort of relief. We're going in for the first Queensland state budget next week, and we've been putting pressure on them, but we're yet to see anything. Even the Courier Mail has reported on this increase and that this is an election promise by the LNP government. We need the government to come to the table with some solutions for local families.
Well, I just got my energy bill, and like most Aussies, I do my best when I'm at home to try and conserve as much energy as I can, but I'm using almost the same amount of kilowatt hours as I did last year, but my bill has gone up. Now, while $150 might be a very welcomed announcement right now, that is not a long-term option for our country. The only way our country is going to get on top of this energy crisis is to change the country's energy plan. We need a balanced energy plan that includes a mix of energy sources, and we don't put all our eggs in one basket. We're going to see a 9% increase in New South Wales on energy bills from the 1st of July this year. We need to get our country back on track. We need to deal with energy. See the Coalition's energy plan below.
I have a question for all the Australians. How's your power bill? No, seriously, how are you doing after seeing your power bill? Because I know Jake and I aren't the only one. We know what our power bill roughly sits at. Mind you, Jake is hardly home and it's me and my dog. $800 for a power bill for just one person and a dog? Something's not adding up. Usually our bills are, the highest our bill has ever been is $500, not $800. I don't know, something's a bit iffy at the moment. It was generous of them to give us the credits, don't get me wrong. But why was our bill cheaper when they gave us the credits? But now the bill's higher now that we don't have the credits left. I don't know.
So what is your power bill? I just checked ours and we still have 29 days to go and our current usage so far is $1,600 for 2 months. We're with AGL. We have a smart meter, so it's not an estimate, that's actual. It's fucked. What the hell? I turned all the heaters off tonight. Freaking out because our power bill is so expensive. That's why I've got my jacket on. But that is actually fucking ridiculous. I would love to know what your winter power bill is. I also forgot to mention we actually have solar. So that's what it is with solar.
Cost of living crisis is bad, people. Prices are through the roof. Everything's expensive as hell. I've had to do some stuff I'm not proud of.
You know, just once, I'd like to get back in my car after being in Coles or Woolworths and not feel like I've been taken for a complete ride. I spent $23 to get 5 items. 2 boxes of biscuits, some Woolworths brand cocoa powder. I thought I was in Coles for a second there. 375 grams. It's not even half a kilo. And that was $8.30 or $8.50. Some breadcrumbs and cheese and bacon rolls. Would you consider $6 for a packet of cheese and bacon rolls to be the sale price? They were on sale for $6, marked down for $6.50.
Electricity in Australia has stopped being a basic utility. It has become a luxury. Families are staring at bills that climb higher every quarter, bills that feel less like payments for service and more like ransom notes. Heating in winter, cooling in summer, even keeping the lights on, all of it now comes with a price tag that feels impossible. Parents are forced to ration power, telling children not to use the heater, not to leave lights on, not to charge devices too long. Pensioners sit in cold homes wrapped in blankets because turning on the heater feels like financial suicide. Students study by dim lamps, calculating how much electricity they can afford to burn. And the worst part, this isn't about extravagance, it's not about luxury lifestyles, it's about survival. Ordinary households are being punished for simply existing, for daring to cook dinner, to run a washing machine, to keep the fridge running. Electricity has become a symbol of how fragile life has become in Australia, proof that even the basics are slipping out of reach.
In Australia, the cost of living is getting too expensive, and you can't change my mind. First things first, let's talk about grocery shopping. If you have a family or you eat like you are a family, surely you've questioned your grocery shopping lately. These prices are higher than Snoop Dogg. Like, bro, am I doing my grocery shopping at the airport? How about gas and electric bills? Growing up, I'm the one that used to laugh at my parents for telling me to turn the lights off. Now I'm the one at home playing Bondi Rescue. Instead of saving people, I'm trying to turn every light off to save kilowatts. Lastly, petrol prices. Soon, I'm gonna need to refinance the house just to fill up my tank. Scott Morrison, I don't know if you're testing us, but I am not your strongest warrior. I'm this close to start selling photos of my toes.
Your power bill is about to increase again. From July 1, we're expecting to see increases between 2 to 9%, and that's on top of the 40% increase since 2022. We are one of the biggest gas producers in the world, but the gas companies export most of that to Japan, China, and South Korea, who are willing to pay top dollar. And when Australia wants some of that gas, we have to compete with them on price. The coalition are promising to force gas companies to keep more gas in Australia, and they're hoping this will lead to lower power bills for you and me, but they haven't released any numbers on this yet. The coalition also want to build nuclear reactors, which they say will make energy cheaper, but that plan has received lots of criticism. So what about the Labor Party? They promised to continue energy bill relief, taking an extra $150 off your energy bill in 2025, which the coalition say isn't addressing the root cause of the issue. The Labor Party also want to increase the supply of renewable energy. They promise to invest in renewable electricity generation, as well as subsidize homes to buy solar batteries. Follow us for more election content explained simply.
It's another hit to the hip pocket. Queenslanders are being warned to brace for another round of bill shock.
It is one of those things that has a big impact on our household bill.
The energy market regulator revealing wholesale prices increased by 20% in the first quarter of this year, sparked by heat and humidity and a surge in demand.
It's quite alarming. We know that other states have actually seen a decrease.
The energy regulator's draft proposal suggests from July 1, prices will increase by $54 to $2,022 a year.
If the government had taken our suggestions to put in place renewable energy and make sure our electricity system is in public hands, we would be saving Queenslanders.
The regulator says less Queensland coal production is also a factor, although the government is adamant
Callide doesn't have any impact on this. One-off spikes in wholesale prices don't result in an increase in retail prices.
Despite wholesale price forecasts, the latest inflation data reveals Brisbane residents are paying 9.5% less for electricity than this time last year as a result of the government's energy rebates.
We'll be providing more cost of living relief.
Until then, the best advice is shop around.
Head to those comparison websites, see if you can find a better deal.
In a cost of living crunch, every dollar counts. Rachel Baxter, 7 News.
What if I told you Australia is sitting on some of the most powerful energy resources in the world, but we're still paying through the roof for electricity? We export our energy dirt cheap, and then we buy it back at premium prices. We export 88% of our black coal, 79% of our gas, and 100% of our uranium. But our energy grid keeps breaking down and our bills keep rising. We send cheap coal to China, gas to Japan, and then we buy back from them solar panels and batteries for inflated prices. Our wind turbine industry is dead. We can't even afford to make the parts anymore. China undercuts us. This is economic suicide. We are so energy rich, but we're dirt poor on power. We don't just have 1 or 2 natural resources, we have 5. Coal, uranium, gas, oil, thorium. We have literally every resource a country could dream of. Australia could be an energy superpower. We've got 20% of the world's thorium, enough to power plants for 500 years, but instead we're forcing families to choose between grocery bills and power bills.
But the power bill is only one piece of the puzzle. The cost of living crisis is everywhere, pressing down on Australians like a weight that never lifts. Groceries cost more every week. Rent eats half of every paycheck. Fuel prices make commuting a punishment. And when the electricity bill arrives on top of all that, it feels like the final blow. Families are cutting back on food to pay utilities. Parents are skipping meals so their children can eat. Pensioners are rationing medication because the bills keep climbing. Students are juggling multiple jobs just to afford rent and electricity, leaving no time for study. This isn't resilience. This isn't doing it tough. This is exhaustion. A system that drains people until there's nothing left. A system that tells Australians to be grateful for survival while quietly stripping away dignity, and the spiral keeps tightening. Every price rise pushes households closer to collapse. Every bill forces another impossible choice. Every month feels like a battle, not for prosperity, not for comfort, but for the bare minimum of survival.
Let's not fool ourselves, Deputy Speaker, that Australia is 1 to 2% of global emissions. And, Deputy Speaker, the 3 biggest emitters across the globe are the United States, China and India, and none of them, not one of those economies, is signed up to the aggressive emission reduction targets that this government has. So they may feel very righteous. They may feel very, that they're going to save the globe, but I can tell you right now, Deputy Speaker, you could shut Australia down today, turn off every light, every electrical appliance, stop driving any car or any vehicle and do all that, and you know what that would mean? That would do nothing to the temperature of the globe, Deputy Speaker. China's emissions go up more every year. China's emissions go up more every year than the total emissions of this country. But yet this government is hell-bent on an ideology to cut emissions at a rate that is literally all it's going to do. We're not going to be exporting anything except jobs, Deputy Speaker. That'll be the biggest exporter in this country, will be jobs with their emission reduction targets, Deputy Speaker. So the plan that was released on the weekend, Deputy Speaker, with emission reductions, a very sensible plan, I believe, in doing our fair share, is we're actually taking China and India out, Deputy Speaker, out of the modelling, because we thought, well, if we put them in, we could actually still keep putting emissions up. So what we looked at were OECD countries, Deputy Speaker, like-minded economies, similar economies to us. And we said, well, let's match them. Let's not do what they say they're going to do. Let's do what they are actually doing, Deputy Speaker. And again, the modelling that would show that we would certainly not be racing ahead with the ideological obsession that this government has, and would certainly slow down the exporting of jobs that this government is doing. So again, I commend those opposite to read the report, Deputy Speaker.
G'day, Prime Minister. It's Duncan here. Now, I know you've said helping Aussies with rising power bills is your #1 priority. Well, mate, here's a bit of free advice from someone who's paying those bills. Stop making Australians fund their own pain. Extending a $150 rebate won't fix the problem. It's like slapping a Band-Aid on a cracked dam. Every time you chase these renewable energy dreams without balance, the costs go up, and it's the battlers footing the bill. And here's how you fix it. Slow down the obsession with expensive renewables until you've got the storage and base load to back it up. And cut demand by reducing record immigration numbers that are pushing energy use, housing and infrastructure past breaking point. Aussies don't need another rebate. They need reliable, affordable power and leadership with the guts to make it happen. This is Duncan reminding you, Prime Minister, that every light switch in this country runs on common sense, not politics.
If you are a renter in Australia right now, over the last 4 years, your rent has increased by 55%. But if you ask the Australian Bureau of Statistics or the Australian government, your rent's only increased by 20%. So how can there be such a big disparity between what people are feeling out there in the market and what the official data is suggesting? Now, this is a big problem because the government are using a rental increase of 20% to set their policy, whereas if you look at the data, it's actually gone up 55%. Let me explain. Now, behind me right here, I've got the data set for every single property in Australia. This is what we call the valuer general data for anyone who works in property. And the solid blue line you can see behind me, that's your typical price point over time. So the median value or the middle property, the median value over time, so that solid blue line is how those prices are increasing. The dotted blue line behind me is the typical value of the rent. Now, we've actually only collected rental data since about 2012. We haven't got it as far back from the 70s like we do for the prices. But what you can see here is, this is back in 2011. So there's a little increase in rent and then it kind of sat flat for quite a few years. Then 2017, you saw a little tick up again. Then rent sat flat until about 2021. And then what you can see is the mother of all rental increases over that short-term time frame, right? So over those 4 years, the data point there is $400 a week. And the data point at the north is, if I get my finger just right, at there, that's $621 a week. So the typical property in Australia rented for $400 in 2021. Now it's at $621. That represents a 55% increase over that time frame. So why does the Australian Bureau of Statistics think it's only 20%? Let me tell you. Behind me, I've just ripped from the ABS website measuring rents in CPI, which is inflation. The way they explain it is what they're saying is what I just showed you is advertised typical rent. So like the median advertised rent. The Australian Bureau of Statistics are saying, well, not everyone's in that private rental market. There are some people in the rental market who have had their contracts for 20 or 30 years and their rents haven't increased at all. There are people in public housing and their rents haven't increased at all. So the analogy they use is they're having a look at the temperature of the bath water, right? Whereas what I've just showed you is the temperature of what's coming out of the tap. That's the advertised rents. But what's coming out of the taps doesn't necessarily affect everyone who's in the rental market because there are some people, a tiny, tiny minority of people who are on these old school leases and the rents haven't been put up very quickly. The problem is the temperature from the tap has gone up really fast, really quickly. So the bath water is kind of lagged. It's going to suddenly go up very, very quickly. So it's a lagged indicator. And it's also not a great way of measuring data. So when we look at property prices, we don't use averages, we use medians. What that means is
if I live in a 10-house townhouse complex, right? If 9 people in my townhouse are earning $100,000 a year and there's one rich dude earning $1 million a year, and you want to get a gauge of what kind of the typical person in this townhouse block is earning, you'd line us all up in a row and you'd pick the middle person. The typical person in our block's on 100K. If you use the average, that dude on $1 million is going to throw out your average, and suddenly the average is 200,000, and you go, well, everyone in that block, the average is 200K. But that's not a good sample because your data is thrown out by the rich dude. So when we measure property prices changing, we use medians, not averages, to understand what the typical person is experiencing. But measuring the temperature of the bathwater is like using an average. It's not the median. It's irrelevant because anyone entering the rental market at this point in time, we can't drink the bathwater. The only thing available to you is what's coming out of the tap. So it's actually a much more useful statistic to look at what the temperature of the tap was in 2020 and then look at what the temperature of the tap is now. Because what you want to see is the relative change over time. It actually doesn't matter what the absolute bathwater is. This is immensely frustrating because you've got economists like this guy who work for ANU who are advising government, and he put this up a couple of days ago saying that rents have grown slower than inflation over the last 6 years, which is mind-boggling and categorically untrue. So when they measure how rents affect people over time, they look at it as the rent relative to your salary, right? Because who really cares if my rent doubles over 10 years if my wage has also doubled over 10 years? I'm in the exact same position. But if my rent doubles and my salary doesn't move, I'm getting poorer over time. Now, I don't know about you, but I work in the private sector, right? I do not work for government. And what that means is the wage growth over the last 5 years is nothing like 55%. So if the rents went up 55% in 5 years, if my wage didn't grow by that same percentage, I just got really, really poor really, really quickly. And they've got economists like this trying to tell you that everyone's in the same position that they were 6 years ago, which is categorically untrue, and also just demonstrates that this person has no real life experience with the rental market and is just looking at data sets. That this is so obviously untrue if you know anyone who is looking for rent or if you've been looking at rental properties at all in the last 6 years. Now, rental inflation is one of the main indicators in inflation that's a problem. So the last couple of days, they announced the inflation data is up again, which is a problem. And the main things driving it are rents, which were up like 5% in the quarter, and electricity prices. Now, from a macroeconomic perspective, the way the kind of the Reserve Bank run the economy is basically when everything starts to get too expensive, which is what's been happening over the last few years, they put the interest rates up and they make it really expensive to borrow money, which makes business operating costs expensive. It makes it expensive to own a property. And the whole idea is that if we are making everyone's mortgages more expensive, suddenly no one has any money, right? Suddenly people will stop spending because the prices got too expensive. So if I don't have as much money to go to the pub and go on holidays because my mortgage is costing me a lot more money, suddenly I'm going to stop going on holidays and stop going to the pub. The pub and Travelodge are like, shit, no one's buying our stuff anymore. We have to lower prices to incentivize people to come back. So that's the kind of the whole mechanism is meant to work. That you're meant to put interest rates up, people stop buying stuff, and businesses lower their prices. Problem being, rents and electricity are essential, right? And so if my cost of living is going up by putting up interest rates, landlords are not going to reduce rents because we're in a tight supply environment. So this is a little bit tricky, but how this basically works is if I'm a landlord and my interest rate goes up, right? What do you think I do to the rent? If it costs me a lot more money to hold on to that investment property, I'm going to push that straight onto the tenant. So you can't use an increase in interest rates to lower rents because those two things are what we call pro-cyclical. So as interest rates go up, rents go up because I'm the landlord. You made my mortgage more expensive. I need a bit of help. I'm going to pass that cost burden onto the tenant. Now, if you had some slack in your rental market, like if there were lots of different places for people to move, that would be okay because landlords wouldn't have the power to just put rents up because people would be able to move and trade. The problem is in Australia, there's a massive supply constraint. There ain't nowhere for people to live. The vacancy rates are under 1% in almost every market. So what that means is the market's kind of jammed up. And so people don't have anywhere to go. And so what I've got behind me is the total dwellings completed data from the ABS, which is basically how many houses have they been building. And what you can see, let me get myself out of the road, since 2017, we were building a lot more houses per year, like 55,000 per year were being completed. Now, with a very, very quickly growing population, we're only doing $40,000 a year. So the amount of houses that they are building and completing is getting less and less and less and less. And what do you think that does to the available rental stock? Here's one I prepared earlier. We used to have vacancy rates back in 2008 at like 4%, right? That's a healthy market because it means that there's kind of an even balance between renters and landlords because there's places for renters to go. But what you can see is the vacancy, particularly since 2020, has tanked and now we're at sub 1% everywhere. So what that means is if landlords start to hike their rents because the Reserve Bank hikes interest rates, renters have nowhere to go because there's no slack in the rental market. You need a lot more properties available for lease to give renters power in this situation. The same thing is true for electricity. I'm not going to stop buying electricity because you've made it, because it's expensive or because you put interest rates up, and it's an essential service. So you can't really deal with inflation on rents and electricity by rising interest rates. It's almost like you need another mechanism like tax.
So here we are, the end of the line, at the end of patience, the end of pretending that Australia's cost of living crisis is anything but catastrophic. And at the centre of it all sits one bill, the power bill. The quiet piece of paper or the digital notification that arrives every month like a threat, a reminder that survival itself now comes with a price tag. Because, let's be honest, this isn't just about electricity. It's about dignity. It's about the collapse of affordability. It's about the humiliation of knowing that even keeping the lights on has become a luxury. The power bill has become the symbol of collapse. It's not just a utility statement, it's proof. Proof that wages are stagnant. Proof that costs are spiralling. Proof that survival in Australia is harder than ever. Families stare at numbers that climb higher every quarter. Parents ration heating in winter, cooling in summer, even lights at night. Pensioners sit in cold homes wrapped in blankets because turning on the heater feels like financial suicide. Students study by dim lamps, calculating how much electricity they can afford to burn. This isn't extravagance. This isn't luxury. This is survival. And survival shouldn't feel like punishment. But the power bill is only one piece of the puzzle. The cost of living crisis is everywhere. Groceries cost more every week. Rent eats half of every paycheck. Fuel prices make commuting a punishment. And when the electricity bill arrives on top of all that, it feels like the final blow. Families are cutting back on food to pay utilities. Parents are skipping meals so their children can eat. Pensioners are rationing medication because the bills keep climbing. Students are juggling multiple jobs just to afford rent and electricity, leaving no time for study. This isn't resilience. This isn't doing it tough. This is exhaustion, a system that drains people until there's nothing left. A system that tells Australians to be grateful for survival while quietly stripping away dignity, and the spiral keeps tightening. Every price rise pushes households closer to collapse. Every bill forces another impossible choice. Every month feels like a battle, not for prosperity, not for comfort, but for the bare minimum of survival. Behind every power bill is a story. A family forced to choose between heating and food. A single parent working 2 jobs, still unable to keep up. A student living in a share house with 6 others, pretending it's temporary. A pensioner quietly packing up because the landlord wants market value. These aren't isolated struggles. They're everywhere. They're daily. They're the quiet crisis no one wants to name. And the human cost is devastating. Relationships strained, communities fractured. Mental health collapsing. And people living in cars, in tents, in motels, while landlords expand portfolios and politicians give speeches about resilience. And yet, the government pretends this is fine. They call it market forces. They say it's challenging. They frame it as global pressures. But it's not global when groceries double in price. It's not temporary when families are forced out of their homes. It's not resilience when people are living in cars. They'll say Australians are resilient, that they're adaptable, that they're resourceful, but resilience isn't a policy. Adaptability isn't a solution. Resourcefulness isn't a safety net. These are survival mechanisms, and survival shouldn't be the baseline in a wealthy nation. The truth is simple. The government knows. They know the rent is too high. They know the wages are too low. They know the power bills are crushing households, but they're not fixing it. Because they're not feeling it, because they benefit from it, because they own the homes, they sit on the boards, they write the policies, they cash the checks, Australia sells itself as paradise beaches, sunshine, opportunity, stability. But what does it mean when the people who live here don't believe it anymore? What does it mean when citizens feel trapped, exploited, and betrayed? What does it mean when the lucky country feels like a scam? It means the identity is broken. The myth is shattered. The brand is hollow because if working full-time still leaves you broke, if rent eats half your income, if electricity bills feel like ransom notes, and if the government keeps gaslighting you into thinking it's your fault, then what exactly are we proud of? Australia isn't losing its dignity because of global pressures. It's losing it because of choices, because of priorities, because of cowardice. And yet, you're expected to stay quiet, to keep working, to keep paying, to keep pretending, because if you speak up, you're entitled. If you complain, you're ungrateful. If you demand better, you're radical.